Hello, and welcome to the 64th season of the Colorado Shakespeare Festival and our production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Our 2021 season also includes The Odyssey, adapted by Mary Zimmerman, and an original Praxis production of Pericles. My name is Amanda Giguère, and I am CSF's Director of Outreach, and I'm also the dramaturg on A Midsummer Night's Dream. I'm filming this video from the traditional lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. In normal times, I would be giving this public talk to you in a classroom near our theater, and you would be preparing to see the production about an hour from now. And maybe you'd be leaning over to look out the window, to watch the skies, hoping that it doesn't rain on you during the performance. This summer, however, we have to settle for a pre-recorded, pre-show talk. My goal of this video is to give you some context for the production you'll be seeing, which I hope will deepen your experience when you join us at the Mary Rippon Outdoor Theater. So let's start with a plot synopsis. The play is set in Athens. We begin at court, move to the forest, and we conclude back at court. Over the course of the play, we will meet several different groups of people: the royals, the lovers, the rustics, and the fairies. So let's start with the royals. Duke Theseus of Athens has recently defeated Hippolytus in battle, and soon they will marry. So we have a royal wedding to look forward to. Now the lovers. Hermia and Lysander are in love. Hermia's father Aegeus wants her to marry Demetrius instead. Hermia's friend Helena used to date Demetrius, and she is still in love with him. The Duke of Athens, Theseus, gives Hermia three choices: marry Demetrius, live as a nun, or die. Hermia chooses option D, none of the above, and runs off to the forest with Lysander to elope. Demetrius and Helena run after them. So now on to the rustics, also sometimes called the mechanicals or the rude mechanicals. In the same forest, some Athenian workers are rehearsing a play for the royal wedding. Peter Quince, the director, hands out parts to the actors, and they agree to rehearse in the woods. They want to keep the play a secret until it's ready. Nick Bottom, an overzealous actor, wants to play every part in the play, but settles on just playing the leading role. There are also fairies in this play. In the same forest, the rulers of the fairy kingdom, Oberon and Titania, are in a big fight. In our production, Oberon and Titania might look an awful lot like Theseus and Hippolytus. Oberon administers a magical flower to Titania's eyes that will make her fall in love with the first creature she sees when she wakes up. That's going to become important later. Things get really interesting when the fairies start to meddle with the mortals in the woods. Oberon tries to fix the unrequited love situation between Demetrius and Helena through the use of that magic flower, but his fairy servant, Puck, mixes up the mortals. Soon, both Lysander and Demetrius, thanks to the magic flower, are now in love with Helena instead of Hermia, and Hermia is really confused. Puck also meddles with the actors rehearsing the play. He transforms Bottom into a donkey, and Titania falls in love with him, thanks again to that pesky flower. Things eventually get sorted out, and the play ends with not just a royal wedding, but with a triple wedding. But wait, there's more. Bottom, Quince, and the rest of the rustics perform their play for the newlyweds. The mortals then head to bed, the fairies bless the house, and Puck apologizes for any offense, inviting us to imagine it was all just a dream. So a little bit of context about this play. It was likely composed around 1595 or 1596, right around the time that Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet. In fact, scholar Marjorie Garber says, this play is like Romeo and Juliet turned inside out. There were several printed versions of the play. There was a first quarto in 1600, a second quarto in 1619, and then it appeared in the 1623 first folio. The fact that it was printed so many times tells us about its popularity. The play draws on several existing sources, including Plutarch's Lives, Chaucer's Knight's Tale, and Ovid's Metamorphoses, and includes many references to classical mythology, which makes it a really fun pairing with our other main stage production of The Odyssey. Fun fact for you, in the play, Nick Bottom is by trade a weaver. Bottom's name comes from the bottom, or the core of the skein upon which the weaver's yarn was wound. And Bottom also speaks the most words in the play, with Helena coming in a distant second. As far as production history, this play is currently a very popular Shakespeare play for theaters to produce. This is CSF's 10th production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. The last time we produced it was in 2013, directed by Geoffrey Kent. But the play has not always been this popular. In 1662, the diarist Samuel Pepys called it the most insipid, ridiculous play that I ever saw in my life. The play did become very popular in the 19th century, and productions were full of spectacle, with directors really seizing the opportunity to put classical Athens on stage, and to crowd the stage with songs, with fairies, and with lush English woodlands. In Charles Keane's 1856 production, for example, there was even a ballet of 90 fairies on stage. Until the middle of the 1920s or so, the lovers' scenes were played fairly straight and not for comedy as they often are today. One watershed production of A Midsummer Night's Dream was Peter Brook's 1970 Stratford staging. He stripped the play of its Victorian legacy and interpreted it as a metaphor instead. He staged it in a white cube, used a lot of circus arts. He had Oberon and Puck on trapezes. And this modernist approach to the play invited audiences to see the play anew, and Brook's influence on the play still does remain today. So as far as Colorado Shakespeare Festival's production, we are very happy to be returning to live theater with A Midsummer Night's Dream. There's something very celebratory and magical about the play. And in many ways, as we watch the Mechanicals rehearsing their play in the woods, the whole of A Midsummer Night's Dream is like a love letter to live performance. Our director is Carolyn Howarth, and she has said for her the heart of the play is about love and disorder. Losing yourself to find yourself, entering the chaos to find order, going on a journey to find out who you are, and then returning from that journey transformed. These characters in the play are all seeking order, but it's only through losing this sense of order and losing their sense of self that they can find freedom and find out who they are. This concept perhaps rings even more true after the year and a half that we have all collectively had. We have had our worlds turned upside down. We have lost so much, whether it's loved ones or our routines or the things we thought were a constant in our lives. And so this invites a question for all of us in the audience of this play. With so much lost this year, and with so much chaos, what kind of clarity has emerged? What have we become? And what have we found? Carolyn's concept is a mashup of the 17th century and the 1980s glam rock scene. Ancient meets modern. Think Prince, Michael Jackson, corsets, fancy coats, like a love letter to a generation. Our costume designer, Megan Anderson Doyle, has created a delicious array of costumes. The royals are inspired by classical Athens and 1980s glamour. So think Dallas, think the royal wedding of Princess Di and Prince Charles. The fairies have their roots in the 1980s glam rock scene. The rustics are the working class of Athens. And the kids are just kids. Think Goonies, Stranger Things, Freaks and Geeks. Some things to watch for in our production. Pay attention to what kind of transformations happen on stage. How are the characters changed over the course of the play? Watch also for how the worlds of the fairies and the mortals collide in this production. Towards the end of the play, Oberon calls for music and says to Titania, "Come, my queen, take hands with me, and rock the ground whereon these sleepers be." Notice throughout the production how the seemingly different worlds of fairies and mortals do overlap. Despite their differences, what do they have in common? Also, considering the title, dreams are pretty significant in the play. See if you can pay attention to all the times dream references appear in the play. From the very first scene when Hippolytus tells Theseus, 4 nights will quickly dream away the time until their wedding, to the very end of the play with the epilogue when Puck asks the audience to imagine the whole play was no more yielding but a dream. We hope that you enjoy the celebration embedded in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Our goal is to leave you with a sense of hope as we rock the ground with Shakespeare under the stars. Thank you so much for joining us. Theater going is a very different experience this year, and we're so very grateful that you are helping us keep theater alive and well in these uncertain times. Enjoy the performance.